So now information systems, operation, maintenance, and service management. So you have to basically, when you're looking at this domain, you have to basically sync it with domain 3. Okay, where we talk about acquisition, development, and implementation. Okay, so similarly, we'll talk about operating, maintaining, and service management of the same domain of the existing system in an organization. Okay, this is quite a similar domain, as I said, with the previous version domain. Let's start. So information systems operations and business resilience are important to provide assurance to the users as well as the management that the expected level of service will be delivered. So here what we're checking here is that whether system is continuing to give us the benefits, okay, and it is continuing to provide the service levels that is expected. Okay, now service level is very important for people who are working in terms of project management, etc. You know that how SLAs are monitored, okay, and they are monitored by the vendors. They are monitored by the customers of your organization very closely, and any deviations with the service level agreements is a big thing for them, is a problem for them, and then you or there is an incident for many organizations, and then you resolve it to ensure that you function on the agreed service level agreements. So that's what we're gonna ensure, okay, that the system is operating as per the service level that is required from that system, okay, or that has been agreed with your customers. Now, the service level expectations are derived from the organization business objectives. IT service delivery includes IS operations. Okay, now IT service delivery is basically your IT service delivery. You know, your IT is a business. Okay, for example, and then you are dealing with the customers. Okay, now customers could be external customers. Okay, or it could be internal customers. Okay, so internal customers is, for example, IT department in the organization, and and that IT department is serving the HR, serving finance, serving accounts, serving operations, etc. Okay, that is one thing. That is one role of the IT department. And there are some organizations in which the operations is IT, okay, and they are serving to a customer. For example, many organizations like HCL, Infosys, TCS, okay, they have operations completely. They are managing IT for other customers, okay, where it is even more important to have the appropriate service levels. Okay, so IT service delivery, when we talk about it, could be internal service delivery, it could be external service delivery also. So IT service delivery includes IS operations, IT services and management of IS information systems, and the groups responsible for supporting them. Disruptions are also an often unavoidable factor. We know disruptions can occur. For example, COVID-19, this is a disruption. No one anticipated it. That happened. Okay, so there are some unavoidable factors of doing business. Now, preparation is key. So for example, COVID-19, no one even was prepared for it. Okay, for example, you are prepared for malware attack, you are prepared for virus attacks, you are prepared for any for earthquake, flood. You know, these things are natural. But pandemic is something which people never considered it. Okay, but still you can prepare for now. For example, now many companies would consider that in their BCPs, in their existing risk management, etc. Okay, so preparation is key to being able to continue business operations while protecting people, assets, and reputation. Employing business resiliency tactics. Now, what do we mean by resiliency? If I may ask you guys, what do we mean by resiliency? Continuing the operations with business continuity. Both continuity and resiliency are basically for trust on the information systems. Okay, so both are mechanisms of trust on information system. Now, continuity is having an alternate. Okay, continuity is about having an alternate. For example, you are working from home. That's an alternate. Okay, if one server fails, you have another alternate. If one firewall fails, you have another firewall. Okay, that's an alternate. Whereas resiliency is the system has its own mechanism of recovering itself. Okay, for example, your systems gets blue screen, okay, and it has its own troubleshooting mechanism that runs on the system to basically, so it is about having a system failover plan. Okay, if a system fails, the system recovers itself. Okay, there's no alternate. I'm not using another laptop. I'm using the same laptop. Okay, I'm using the same system, but it has the ability to recover itself without any interference. Okay, it's also without any interference, it is doing that. Okay, so that is the difference between the business resiliency and business continuity. Okay, so employing business resiliency tactics helps the organization address these issues and limit the impact. Now, I'm not very sure, how ISACA perceives this, but this is what I did understand from both of them. Okay, the difference between both of them. As I said, this is also this is 23%. Okay, this is amounts to the same what we had in 29 May 2019. Okay, so objective of the domain is to basically evaluate, okay, organizations' ability to continue business operations. Okay, evaluate IT service management practices. Okay, how IT service delivery is managed and how it aligns with the business requirements. Then conduct periodic reviews of information systems and enterprise architecture. Periodic reviews are basically, for example, internal audit. Internal audit is what? It's a review, or maybe a self-assessment. Okay, it's a review. So you do a periodic assessment for continually improving your system or continually improving your management system. Then evaluate the IT operations to determine whether they are controlled effectively and continue to support the organization objectives. Now you have to see whether the operations are supporting the business objectives or not. Now, in terms of if you are very clear with the business objectives and you're very clear with the IT objectives, okay, and both are very much aligned, I think this would be also be true, okay, in terms of how it is effectively supporting the organization's objectives. Then evaluate IT maintenance practices. So if you are using hardware, software, okay, you also require maintaining those. Okay, so IT maintenance practices to determine whether they are controlled effectively and continue to support business objectives. Then evaluate database management practices. Okay, evaluate data governance policies and procedures. Evaluate problem and incident management policies and practices. So you have to understand the difference between problem and incident here. Evaluate change, configuration, release and patch management policies. So this also we started in domain 3. Okay, end user computing. What is end user computing? I talked about domain 1. End user computing is, for example, you have an IT department. Okay, you have HR, you have finance, you have operations. Okay, now if operations wants an IT wants to run an IT project on its own. Okay, IT project, operations is not giving the job to IT, it is doing it own self. Okay, if HR wants a IT system, for example, they want a payroll system. Now they're not taking the support of the IT department. They are developing a payroll. Sorry, HR is developing a payroll by its own. Okay, by for example, by acquiring or developing its own system. Now here IT is now the payroll system is not in the purview of IT department. Okay, there is a possibility of risks there. Okay, so that is basically what end user computing is, that the department itself is doing something on its own without having an overview from the IT department. Okay, this happens a lot of time. For example, IT department doesn't have that kind of capacity and that kind of skill that is required. Then the payroll department, the HR department gets the payroll system developed from an external party, or maybe they develop it oneself. Okay, so then end user computing determine whether the processes are effectively controlled, because those are has to be very much in control. Okay, then evaluate policies and practices related to asset lifecycle management. Okay, what is asset lifecycle? Asset lifecycle is when the asset is taken into an organization, acquired, okay, maintained, acquired, and then it has to be maintained to its life cycle, to its universal date of expiry. Okay, and then it is disposed of securely. That's it. So that's a life cycle. It starts births in the organization and then it gets disposed of. Okay, so for the whole life cycle management of the asset, you have to evaluate what are the policies and procedures stating about it. Okay, the domain topics is computer hardware and architecture. Okay, we'll talk about some of the hardware components. We'll talk about IT asset management. We'll talk about system interfaces. End user computing, we talk about data governance, we talk about system performance management, Problem and incident management, we'll talk about change, configuration, release and patch management, service level management and database management. And we'll also talk about business resilience. Okay, we'll talk about impact analysis, we'll talk about system resiliency. Okay, we'll talk about data backup, storage and restoration, business continuity plans and disaster recovery plans. Okay, let's start with the hardware components and architecture. Very simple. USB related risks related to USB, we know media loss. So there are a lot of risks of using USB drives. Okay, so that is to be considered. Now, data generally organizations do not allow this. Many organizations allow this, but with some kind of encryption mechanism, etc. Okay, for example, in my organization, if you want to copy one file from my system to a USB drive, I cannot see anything in the USB. Then means it is completely encrypted. However, if I want to see a file and I put a USB, I can open it and see it. Okay, if I want to copy a file from the USB to my system, I can do it appropriately. Okay, but however, I cannot take anything from my system to the USB drives. Okay, so that kind of control can be there. Now, and then threats like data theft, so would not happen in that case. Data and media loss, yes. So these are some of the risks related to USBs. I don't have to explain. Many organizations do not have this in place. Now, security controls related to USB, yet what you can do, you can encrypt. Okay, there you can follow tools like Duplicati and other tools. Okay, there are many tools for encryption. You can have pass. Okay, then granular control. Now there are mechanisms to basically detect ports or centralized management of ports. Okay, that is something also we call it granular control. Okay, where any USB drive, if you put any USB drives, it would give alert to the administrator, etc. Okay, that kind of solutions are there in the industry, and that is possible. Then security personal education, very much important. People should be aware of these USB practices. Okay, if they are using for some operation, for example, IT department may use USB drive for updates and patches and etc. etc. Now they should give a clear authorization with some of the business justification for it. Okay, and they should also ensure that you monitor it. Okay, you should have monitor it and also educate that person who is using the USB drives. That's what I was talking about. Security, personal education, very much important. Then lock desktop policy enforcement. Yes, when you are unattended user asset, also we call it, or unattended user equipment. If a person is not using it, it must be locked. Then antivirus policy. Okay, antivirus policy is clear. Okay, so it should be configured to scan all attached drives. During media, users should also be trained to scan files before opening them. User awareness point. Then use of secure devices only. Okay, enforce the use of encryption. Okay, so software is available to manage the USBs. Okay, that we can use for enforcing encryption. Then inclusion of, so in the event a USB drive is lost or misplaced, you include a small readable text file. Okay, means for example, you open you can write phone number, etc. on your in within your USB drive. You can have one file. You can have you can clearly tell your identification. Okay, who to reach out when if we lose the USB drive. Okay, so that is also, that control can also be implemented. Then application on RFID. RFID is basically a barcode, kind of thing, where it is used for managing inventory. Okay. Now, what is the difference between RFID and barcode? Now, RFID is basically using electromagnetic field to automatically identify and track the tags. Okay, I think that may not be the difference, because RFID, the difference is only that RFID works on a radio frequency, and that may not change, in terms of because RFID would definitely have tags. Okay, not the tags or labels won't change with time. So the difference is basically tracking. It helps in tracking. Okay, so RFID basically uses radio frequency. So you would know the you would know the location of that item more accurately in RFID. Okay, whereas barcode, you cannot have, you will not know where that asset is. Okay, generally, for example, Amazon and they are not using barcode, they're using RFIDs. Okay, that would basically is helping the robots to move around and track item. Okay, so application of RFID, you use it asset management, you use in tracking. Okay, it uses radio frequency for tracking the location. It is used for as an evidence for the authenticity. Okay, and it is used in matching, so two tagged items are matched with each other and a signal is triggered due to that. Okay, then you have process controls. This allows the process to use information associated with the tag, okay, and to take an action. Okay, so you can say that you can have a process control with you can have logics, basically with the tags. Okay, what to do with the tags, etc. Then access control. Okay, as the system uses RFID to automatically check whether an individual is authorized to physically access that asset. Okay, then supply chain management, as I said, many organizations. Okay, and it is basically for monitoring and control of products in retail or distribution channels. Okay,